Schools have had a difficult but enlightening couple of years. We all learned that when lockdowns occur, the whole community needs to lean in to keep our kids learning. Like the old saying, it takes a village. Hi, I'm Lacey Kendall, and on this edition of Education Insight, we meet two leaders from local organizations that are helping inland kids feel good about who they are, where they're going, and how hard they want to work to do well in school. Dr. Felix Melendez is the director of Promise Scholars. That's an organization that takes grade school kids to various universities and colleges and asks them what they really want to do when they graduate. Then they follow that child grade by grade to make sure they're on track the whole way to make the dream happen. We meet him later in the show. A Cal State San Bernardino music student is receiving a lot of attention for his music. We'll meet him and hear some of that music later on. But first, we introduce you to Jennifer O'Farrell. She's known for leading the first anti-human trafficking task force in our region, for being the president of the YWCA, and as the founding member of the PIC group. Her work has been honored by the Attorney General's Office, Cal Baptist University, Seroptimus International, and many others. And then she took the leadership position at Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Inland Empire and Orange County, where her team is helping Southern California children realize their potential, build meaningful relationships, recognize their agency, and what we're talking about here today, staying focused on learning. Jennifer, welcome to Education Insight.
Oh my goodness, Lacey, thank you for having me.
First of all, let's go back a ways. What and who inspired the Big Brothers Big Sisters program?
This is a great question. And so this is to the far back. We're looking about 110 years plus.
Oh.
So 110 years. This began in the juvenile justice system. This began in the court system, where court liaisons, judges, attorneys began seeing a common thread between young kids coming into court. And it's not that they didn't have potential, was not that they weren't smart, was not that they weren't caring. The common thread was that they were there in juvenile court because they didn't have a positive role model. And so really Big Brothers Big Sisters has come out of the justice movement, has come out of being about justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, our JEDI framework that we operate on to say, how can we show up and uplift young people and give them an alternative pathway outside of the juvenile justice system.
I'm told that while mentoring is the mission, under your leadership, there are different types of mentoring programs that are going on. Could you tell us about those?
Yes, if you can think about all of our mentoring programs have really four pillars that make them a common thread similar. So we're looking at our JEDI way that I kind of just shared. So we're about justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. We're also one-to-one. So we're looking that every young person has their own single mentor. It's volunteer driven. So all of our volunteers or our mentors are truly volunteers. They are people showing up in the community saying, I want to give back and I want to connect with a young person. And we're youth centered. We're looking at what are the assets our youth have? What do they bring to the table? And who would be the best fit to be someone to be a mentor and to come alongside with them? And so to that point, that framework really creates the ways that we have our community-based program that we have, and then what we call our site-based program. So the community-based is like our tried and true. You've seen this where a mentor picks up their mentee from their home, their apartment complex, their group home, and takes them out into the community. And then we have more of a site-based model where we have mentors that are coming on to elementary school campuses. We have college students meeting with high school students. We have corporate partners meeting with high school students or community college students. And so all of those are taking place more at a site location, but all of it is one-to-one, volunteer-driven, and youth-centered.
So I think everybody understands, Jen, what mentorship is. But for those that may not know this, could you explain why it's so important for young people to have guidance at that very young age?
Yeah, so I think my brain sees this as kind of like two ways. One is like scientific. So what does mentoring actually like have evidence of what it does? And then the other is really like anecdotal in the sense that mentoring is no longer a nice to have for young people. It's a need to have. And how do we, when we think back to our own journeys, most of us didn't live on an island. We had a village. We had people that came in maybe for one time, two times, multiple times, long-term relationships that opened up doors to maybe our first job. gave us that like line of advice when we were in maybe our darkest place to remind us of what we offer to the world. We've had people show up. Be honest too, some of us didn't have maybe good mentors too. And so we've had experiences of people investing or maybe not investing in our lives. But I think those that invested well, we see the fruit of, wow, I wouldn't be here where I'm at without them. And so anecdotally, there's this space in which we are, as humans, we need each other and people that have gone ahead of us and before us. And so scientifically, though, too, we can say, I can tell you that mentorship has proven outcomes, proven in what it does for a young person's social emotional health. How do they see themselves? How do they see the which in ways they're coping and handling and dealing with depression or anxiety or so many of the things our young people are facing? Mentorship is about educational success. It's about creating those pathways so that way, not only do I see myself doing well in this class today, but how am I creating those building blocks for college and career readiness in their future? And it's also about social connection. Because I know you as my mentor, does that open a door to me to meet my future employer, to have an internship? And so it connects me to a world of connections and capital that I may not have without that mentor in my life. And so those are really scientifically what we can prove. But I think anecdotally, we all want connection. We all want someone to know us. And we all want to be reminded that, man, I can do something good in this world. And that's, I think, the gift mentorship offers us.
Yeah. This is Education Insight. Jennifer, what kinds of folks make good mentors? I mean, what do they need to be able to share with a child in order for that experience to really matter?
I think the beauty, if you were to if you look at all of our mentors, so like the 1,000+ mentors that are doing great things in the region, no one person is alike. But I would say what creates a common thread between them all is consistency. They show up consistently with their young person and they meet them where they're at. And I think that is really the gift. I think we sometimes get like wrapped in our head that like, as a mentor, I need to be Yoda. Like I need to have these like magical thoughts or magical kind of ways in which we show up. And really it's like our young people want to be asked how they are. How was your day? What's happening? And then it's really thinking about how do I just open up doors and experiences to build their confidence, to build their experience so that they can anticipate what their future life can look like. And that all just takes somebody showing up consistently.
If I hadn't ever heard about the success that your branch of Big Brothers, Big Sisters, let alone what they're doing nationally, if I hadn't heard about that kind of success, I might wonder if it's safe. So what is the criteria for your team when they're matching a child with what they hope will be a great mentor?
That's a great question. So safety is our number one thing, because let's be honest, that's what most of our parents and guardians that are enrolling their children in and young people in is wanting to know safety. They are entrusting someone in the community to come alongside. And so I playfully, think of us as like the first Match.com that we've been matching people in a way that is thoughtful, intentional, and maybe you didn't have a good Match.com experience, but here you do. It really is, it's a trust of relationships. And so part of that is our mentors go through a screening process from an interview to an assessment to fingerprinting. So through the Department of Justice to DMV review to references. So it really is giving the parent that confidence that this person has the best intentions for their child and this person can become a lifelong family member with them as well.
Do volunteers receive any kind of training after being matched?
They do. And I will say with COVID and the impact of the pandemic and the impact that we're seeing of the needs of our youth, our training has expanded. So kind of twofold. So at entry, what we provide our mentors is training on healthy relationships, on what are good boundaries? How do we set up good boundaries with parent, with the young person, with our mentee? And what does that look like? It's also child abuse detection. How do our mentors become first responders, identifiers, so to speak, in seeing and being aware of child abuse? And then we create kind of, for lack of better words, like continuing education units throughout. So creating workshops that are about mental health, about depression, about anxiety. During COVID was like about, do you know how to use FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, and all of these features of engaging and relating in new ways? So some of it's relevant to the time. Some of it is backbone of here's the things that are going to be helpful for youth, for you to know with your youth. What does it mean to identify that your young person may be interested in a gang or dabbling with drugs? So we really kind of move across the spectrum of needs, but we also provide training on from a mentor to a mentor. So having really that peer-to-peer relationship amongst our mentors to say, here's what I'm learning about myself in being a mentor and giving myself grace if I didn't show up as well or made a comment that I need to work on. And we've really infused a lot of how do we have empathy and how do we cultivate empathy as humans in relationships? How do we really look at cultural humility and engaging different relationships, different demographics, different cultures and communities? And so we have an ongoing kind of CEU training throughout their entire mentorship relationship.
Parents experience problems. Guardians, as a foster parent, I had moments when I didn't know how to handle a certain situation. So what kind of support do these volunteers at Big Brothers Big Sisters get when they run down an alleyway they don't know what to do and how to handle their child?
This is really, I think, the key of what I love about Big Brothers Big Sisters model nationwide and locally is exactly that. I think when we say we're one-to-one, that sometimes make you go, am I an island by myself with this youth? Like, what if I run into questions or roadblocks? And so every mentoring friendship is assigned a case manager to come alongside and support, to coach, to train, or maybe it's a call of, wow, I just learned that my mentee doesn't have a bed. They've been sleeping on the couch. How can our agency be a resource and rectifying that? So that way the mentor's not alone. So then how do I have a conversation? We're talking about dating. What's my role in that? How do I talk about that? How would mom or guardian want me to share and communicate about that? And so really being able to have a staff member that's their point of contact to go to say, okay, here's things we're uncovering, or here's things I'm seeing. What's the best way? How do I do this? And so you're not walking alone. You have a case manager that calls you monthly, but that you can call at any time to figure out, how do I navigate this journey of life together?
Yeah. So how do mentorships like these ultimately affect a child's accomplishments in school or in relationships with family and others? And before you answer that, Jennifer, let's take a quick break. Our guest is Jennifer O'Farrell of Big Brothers Big Sisters. On our show today, we're speaking with leaders from two major community organizations that are offering support to local students to help them graduate and succeed. More in a moment. This is Education Insight. Welcome back to Education Insight. Today we're looking at nonprofit organizations that are leaning in to help our local students do better in school. Jennifer O'Farrell leads Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Inland Empire and Orange County, and she joins us by phone today. Jennifer, before the break, I asked what kind of help a big brother or big sister volunteer receives from your team when they run into a roadblock, as parents and teachers know all too well.
Thanks, Lacey. So let me start numerically. So let me start with data. So to help quantify what impact mentorship has. So the first is this last year, 98% of our youth graduated high school on time. 43% of those youth are the first in their family to have a high school diploma in their home.
Wow.
And 67% enrolled into college. So we're really looking at an entire population of pipeline, and not even enrolled into college. Let me correct myself. 67% were the first in their family to enroll into college. So when we think about data that's telling us this, now let's think about so what were the formative spaces? Those are our seniors graduating, but we serve from age 6 to 24 years of age. It's about trust. It's about connection. It's about learning, how do we handle how do we have conflict situations? How do we build trust and confidence to say, oh, I can't do that in school, to I can do that in school. And that's really, I think, the gift of mentorship, is that we're looking at the soft skill development, if we want to call it in education, the 21st century foundational skills our young people need. But we're building that backbone. So as we have great pathways in our region of CTE, of internships, we're creating the technical skill. Mentoring is creating that backbone of the foundational skill development. So our young people know how to connect, relate, communicate, come alongside, and be, not only when they're adults, the quality workforce we want, but as children, having the confidence to say, yeah, I may not have the circumstances or environment at home that has pointed me this direction, but I now know I could be the mayor. I now know because I've experienced and been connected to the chief of police, or to a teacher, or to a doctor. I can see the potentials of my future, thanks to my mentor connecting me to them.
Yeah. Aside from the mentorship, What are some other reasons that parents or guardians might really want to enroll their kids in Big Brothers, Big Sisters?
So I'll take this first as a parent myself. I want a village for my child. I want my child to have people around with different perspectives and worldviews so that she can flourish, so she can learn how other communities, other groups, other friends think, see the world, experience the world to make her more whole and give her other cultural experiences and other community experiences that she wouldn't maybe have just through my lens. And so I think for myself, there's a value of the village. I think for our parents that are enrolling in, it's truly the space. It's a similar space of they want what's best. They know that they are one piece of the beautiful puzzle to develop their child's life. And they also know that sometimes as parents, we and guardians, we may not be the only voice our child listens to. And so how do we really extend and have a resource to? And then I think some of our families that are in neighborhoods and environments that may not have the role models that they're looking forward to. And so it's not a choice of being able to go next door and have a good positive role model. They come to us because their environment doesn't allow them to have a natural positive role model in their life. And so we serve as that bridge to connect them to other community members that can ignite the potential in their youth.
You mentioned the academic effect and some impressive data, but what emotional impact are these students experiencing? When you sit down and you're chit-chatting with some of the kids in the program, what are you seeing?
So we are seeing young people, especially, in pandemic. I don't know if we say post-pandemic, but in this new world that we've entered, I think we're looking at our youth saying like some of their mentors have saved their life. We've had more youth identified with depression and suicidal tendencies, and their mentor has been the backbone of support, connecting them to resources of counseling, connecting them to treatment centers, connecting them to the village of clinical professionals, as well as being the one that stays alongside with them as they enter in. I think about stories of young boys like David that don't have dad to come to donuts and dad day at school, and his mentor, Greg, has come to every donuts and dad days and talks about, how proud he is to not be alone on those days. So I think that the gamut, depending on where our young person is, our mentors are the backbone. I think in the days of the pandemic, our mentors were almost like the DoorDash delivery. They were bringing groceries. They were bringing things that our families needed and didn't have. And so they were lifelines of emotional and physical nutrient support for our families. And so I think even now, as they're looking at, I love hearing the stories of 30-day exercise plans, because recognizing that our young people and summertime may not be getting all of their wiggles out depending on their age, or really the endorphins moving to help have a positive mindset. And so they're doing 30-day challenges of how can we do hikes? How can we do these running plans? How can we take care of our body to help take care of our mind in the midst of it? So I think on the emotional level, our mentors show up wholeheartedly wherever our young people are at.
What advice do you have for kids and families to ensure, coming from your perspective, that they are on track in their academics and on the right track to a more rounded kind of success?
That's a beautiful question. I think, thinking about our young people in our community, in our region, I would say you are smart, you are talented, you are gifted. And what we need sometimes is someone to remind us that, so a mentor isn't better than you. They're just a champion for you. So I would say, be brave, because I need a mentor. My peers, my colleagues, my best friends, they need mentors. We all need mentors. And so know that a mentor is just igniting the beautiful potential you already have and who your child already has within them. And so I would say be a part of our village, be a part of our Big Brothers, Big Sisters family, because we're just here to ignite the spark that's already within them.
Jennifer, in years past, I have, and you know this, I've been called by a number of different news groups to do stories on you and your impressive work, helping to protect our community and often heal our communities from human trafficking. As the leader of Big Brothers and Big Sisters, you've actually been able to bring these two worlds of yours together recently to help these new kids. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I'm going to just keep crying, Lacey. I think as we look at some of the the hardest abuse perils that our children and young people have faced. And so when you see about and think about human trafficking of children that have been abused and forced into sex slavery, to labor trafficking, what an opportunity to be able to be a part of the Big Brothers Big Sisters space is we get to swim upstream. I get to swim upstream and have a team and have a mentoring movement of volunteers, of community members that say, I want to swim upstream too, to say, how do we prevent atrocities like human trafficking? Why are we waiting to Band-Aid a poor child that has experienced the perils of pain that they should have never have? And what I love is getting to see that our community believes that kids deserve the best. And so our mentors show up because they believe that they can, with one child, make a difference to create new opportunities, to create new connections. So a child is never put into a space of being trafficked or put into a space of another form of abuse. And I think that's, the blend of moving from victim service providing, which is necessary and needed, and we need more champions in the trafficking realm to protect victims that have been victimized. But what could we also do with the what if? What if we had enough mentors in our region to match every child that needed a mentor, wants a mentor, with a mentor? And how many things could we prevent in our region long term that would create the quality of life for everybody that we all dream to have?
Jennifer O'Farrell, the Executive Director of Big Brothers Big Sisters for San Bernardino and Riverside counties. Jennifer, thank you so much for taking our call today and helping us to understand all of this and your very important work.
Thank you so much for having me.
Today on Education Insight, we're looking at 2 Southern California community-based organizations that have made it part of their mission to help our local students do better in their education and stay on track to a more successful career and life. Dr. Felix Melendez is the Executive Director of the Ontario Montclair Schools Foundation of Promise Scholars, which helps school children imagine where they'd like to be and then helps contour their education to make the dream a reality. Dr. Melendez, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Could you tell us a little bit about Promise Scholars and explain your mission to those who may not be familiar?
Certainly. Promise Scholars is a universal access program for students in the Ontario Montclair School District and as they matriculate to the Chaffey Joint Union High School District. We want those kids and our community to further their education and professional development because a educated population is good for business and community. Promise Scholars does work with students as early as first grade and throughout 12th grade and further supports them during their first year of college.
So what does the program actually do for schools, communities, and the kids that you're working with?
Starting with first grade and through fourth grade, students are exposed to lessons on education and career that are embedded with the curriculum that they're already receiving in their classroom. It is a shallow dive into pieces of education and career choices. As they matriculate to upper grade levels in elementary school, we have community college visits. Our all fifth graders in OMSD travel to a local community college. We have partnerships with Chaffey College, Mount Sac, Santiago Canyon College, Fullerton College, Moreno Valley College, and also with our direct feeder, which is Chaffey College. Those students and their teachers get to take a field trip, have an on-campus experience. In the 8th grade, our 8th grade students are given a field trip to a 4-year college, whether it's Cal Poly Pomona, Cal State Fullerton, or our local private university, which is University of La Verne. We partner with 9 partner colleges, and that also is an agreement that Chaffey Joint Union High School District has with students who graduate from their district. One of the things that we added this year was a parent field trip, and we took a bus of 25 parents to Santiago Canyon College so that they could experience something that their students are going to get to do or have done in the past. Of those 25, 20 of those parents, it was the first time they'd been to a college campus. So it's a very unique opportunity and a very eye-opening opportunity for our parents to partner with us.
So what is the impact afterwards of these field trips for, first of all, the kids, but then second of all, how are the parents responding to it?
The impact on the students, we do a pre and post survey with students to gauge what their knowledge is about college, what their knowledge is about the Promise Scholars Program, because it is a universal access. They don't have to sign up for anything. They don't have to be part of a cohort. It's a cohort of 2,000 students at each grade level. So that's one of the beautiful things about our program and the universal access. The post-experience survey, they get to tell us a little bit about their experience, what they enjoyed, what they didn't know, and what they might have learned. Interacting with the parents a few days after that field trip was a great thing, because they were very excited, not just with having gone, but what they learned and what they wanted to know more about. One of the unique opportunities for our parents, Santiago College presented information about one of their credential programs or certification programs, which is about an 18-month program. And when they did the tour of campus, there were 18 private and public entities who were recruiting for that certification area. So they heard about a program, but when they walked outside to do a campus visit, they saw people finding employment with that certification that they had just heard about. So it was a real-time opportunity for them to see what was spoken about in that job that's connected to it in the same day.
How many kids are in the program?
Every grade level has 2,000 students. We service through 12th grade. So last year, we were able to contact and service 18,000 students from first grade through 12th grade.
And then how many, you've already mentioned a number of great colleges and universities that these kids are getting the opportunity to kind of have an interaction with. But how many schools and local colleges are there total? Because that's a lot of students.
We have 9 partner colleges. So those students who go through OMSD and then Chaffey Joint are guaranteed, if they meet the requirements of graduation, are guaranteed a slot at one of our 9 partner colleges, including Cal State San Bernardino, Cal State Bakersfield, as I mentioned, University of Laverne, University of Redlands, Azusa Pacific, Cal Baptist, and Biola. The Chaffey College matriculation is a tuition reimbursement program we have with the City of Ontario. So we have opportunities for kids to start their education right away at a low or no cost. We also provide the funding. That's one of our 3 promises, which is help in paying for college. Every student who comes through and graduates gets a micro scholarship from the foundation. We also have an opportunity scholarship, which I can talk about more as we move through. But those local college partnerships, they will send information to our schools, whether it be our elementaries, middles, or as they move to our other district. The Chaffey College field trip, we've already started arranging. We're putting kids on buses again, which we haven't been able to do for the last 2 years. So we're excited about that. And going to our local 4-year colleges, it's a great chance for the university to show off their campus and garner additional students who might otherwise not even know about the college. But the program does give them that exposure.
Yeah. Felix, so many times here on Education Insight in the past, we have heard long before today that if you don't talk to kids at school and at home about college, if you don't take them so they can see a college campus, they will not ever arrive there. So it's exciting what you're doing. But could you explain further why talking about college at these early ages is so important to these kids?
If it's not part of their vocabulary early, it's hard to put it in later. And our goal now with our Parent Engagement Center and the partnership there here in the district is having the parents aware of that same language. And it's part of the home lexicon as well. It's not just something that a kid talked about at school, but it's something that a parent has had a chance to experience. And they have that same vocabulary that you're working on. And with talking about college, it can be intimidating, especially many of our first-generation families. 90% of our kids who are receiving support from Promise Scholars are first generation. So the parents may know that their student went on a trip. They may not know much about that. They may have a student who went to college, but they didn't go with them to take that first trip. The student was kind of on his or her own. We want to have that conversation happening regularly, not just because of Promise Scholars, but because it's part of the home language now. We're looking at implementing a little bit more at the younger grades, where we tie in some of our visits to other parent opportunities. And that's where the growth is exponential. If the parents get that opportunity, if the parents hear that language, then it becomes just part of the conversation. We're looking at having a Promise Scholar corner at each campus, not manned by a person, but having a QR code for a parent to scan, and they can see a short presentation on the program in English or in Spanish, whatever that home language might be. But also, we present to parent nights. We're going to open houses at different schools. We've already got dates in August. So when we go back to school, Promise Scholars goes back to school as well. We'll go to coffee with the principal. We set up tables for our teachers. We are attending our classified leadership conference here in a few days so that we can give information to our classified staff about our programming, because many of our employees are also parents in our district. Their students will receive support through Promise Scholars, but sometimes they don't put the two things together. They see it as separate. So the more information we give to kids, the more information we give to parents, they begin to have that crosstalk.
If you just joined us, you're listening to Education Insight. I'm Lacey Kendall, and we're speaking with Felix Melendez. He's the director of the Ontario Montclair nonprofit program, Promise Scholars, which helps school children imagine where they'd like to end up and then helps them contour their education to actually realize that dream. Felix, in what ways does this program, or has it so far, helped increase student college and career success? Not just success getting there, but success making it through.
Sure. One of the big things we've had in the last few years, even during the pandemic, was first-year college support. So we have college partners at Chaffey where they have dedicated staff, but also at Cal State San Bernardino, they have dedicated staff to support Promise Scholars students. They have more than just a handful. They're assigned to other programs for sure, but they are specifically looking out for our students. We have a two-way texting program called Signalvine, and our students who leave us and go to college, either locally or out of state, they can communicate with our Promise Scholars staff and have questions answered or concerns, or just having a familiar voice or a text, someone that they know behind that text, answering questions or giving them reassurances. One of the tough pieces of that first year, especially when you leave home, is feeling out of place, not having the support. So at Chaffey and at Cal State San Bernardino, they have people that are assigned to support our kids, but we also can support them via text and even phone call. I ran into a young person who is a Promise Scholar. She just graduated from Montclair High School, and in passing, we were having a conversation as I was shopping, and I found out she was a student who had received one of our small scholarships, and she asked if she could still text and get questions answered, and the answer is a resounding yes. We have data that shows our kids are moving on. Many of our students are moving on to our four-year colleges. Many take that first year and take advantage of that tuition reimbursement at Chaffey College or a local community college. So those kind of things we're tracking to see how many students are continuing that process, and we love to have them come back and work with us. One of our current AmeriCorps students was a OMSD and Chaffey product and is currently working with her alma mater, but she went to a four-year college, came back home, and is working directly with her community. Our high school coordinator for Promise Scholars is also a local product, went away out of state to college, but is back and working directly with her community. So it's kind of a pay it forward, pay it back. And students are really starting to grasp that community piece.
How do you provide support to the students that you've been working with when they get to that point where they're actually transitioning into college now and they're beginning this whole new part of their education? Think about that for a minute as we take a break. We're talking about community organizations that are working to help inland Southern California students do better in school and in life. More with our guest, Dr. Felix Melendez, and more education insight in just a moment. Welcome back to Education Insight. The Yale Book of Quotations credits author Toni Morrison as being the first to say, "It takes a village to raise a child." That was back in 1989. Today, as we're learning here, there are community organizations that believe they are part of that village, responsible for helping our children. On the phone, Dr. Felix Melendez, the executive director of Promise Scholars, an organization that takes grade school children on multiple college and university tours, gets them dreaming about their future, and then helps them stay on track for the next several years of their schooling to realize those dreams. Dr. Melendez, before the break, I asked how Promise Scholars help students when they finally get to the point when they are now ready to enter college. Tell us about that.
We try to do that prior to them leaving, and that's by bringing former Promise Scholars back to either speak directly when we're able to be face-to-face, but also doing short video clips that we post on our social media. And there's an archive. So students who have gone through the process and have been supported now get to share their story and their experience, what to look for, what to look out for, how to kind of navigate that first year. Each student is going to have a different experience. So having an archive of those different student experiences is helpful, because when a student sees him or herself or someone from their school or someone that they knew that's already gone through that process. So we try to do that prior to them making that stride. The summer is a little trickier because once they go out in May, they may not check our emails. They may not respond to that two-way text, but we can make that communication available. We have on the texting platform, there's nudges. So there's reminders that go out on a regular basis. When they're in their senior year, those steps of applying, of creating your account, of getting your letter submission, getting your Cal Grant paperwork, all of those dates and timelines, they get those nudges and those reminders automatically. We try to do that over the summer so that they don't forget that we can support them, and we're here to support them as they move forward.
There's a lot of evidence that shows that the group that has the biggest struggle when it comes to parents is those parents of first-generation college students, because they often feel like they don't know what advice to give at different points because this is completely foreign to them. How do you support those parents when their child from the Promise Scholars program makes it into college?
Sure. And that trip that we took with that set of 25 parents was phenomenal. And that's where we're gonna gain that traction, where they get that experience as well. I'm the product of a first generation family. I'm blessed to have two parents who pushed education on all 7 of their kids, but they didn't have the benefit of that education. They learned the process and the game through their 7 kids. By the time I came around as the youngest, it was pretty standard. They knew their way around them quite a bit better. But we want to be able to tell parents, here's what we're talking about, here's what to look for. Going back to making it part of those conversations at home, not just what did you learn in English today or what was interesting at school today. Let's talk about college. Let's talk about what career you might want to go to, what programs or pathways you might want to take in high school that leads to a different career path, not just four-year colleges, but some of the combination programs that we have with our career and technical education programs in schools. But that's the biggest, I believe, opportunity for us is to spread the word to our parent, not just at, again, the coffee with the principal is important, but having that QR code, that little video, that corner where it answers some of the Promise Scholars questions and gives them some resources prior to having a meeting or a field trip or a meeting that they may not be able to attend. That access to information at any time when it's convenient for them is going to be critical for us as we move into this new school year.
Yeah. You're listening to Education Insight. Felix, it seems that community collaboration in this work must be critical. So how is or are Promise Scholars working and partnering with any other local organizations so that it benefits these students, but also our communities?
Having the City of Ontario and the City of Montclair working closely with us, they're represented on our foundation board. We are in strong partnership with that, not just for the information and those career shadowing opportunities, but financially, they are very supportive with fundraisers and different opportunities. We also work closely with Inland SoCal United Way and the GIA, Growing Inland Achievement, which is a financial aid network that we're working with. Extending beyond that, the private sector is getting involved as well. We are partnered with Ontario Airport. We're working with the Walmart Foundation, Crown Toyota, HDC Construction. They are all local private businesses or enterprises that will help because they understand the educated workforce is a stronger workforce, and that's what they will benefit, not just from talking to kids, but having those kids move forward, be educated, be better employees, and have those opportunities. Those outside entities understand the gain, and the partnership with the two school districts between Ontario Montclair School District, which is a K-8, and Chaffey Joint Union High School District, which is our feeder 9 through 12. We have like goals. And when we are successful, the data shows that next school district is successful as well. And there's a correlation. We've seen the data from our schools that we feed into. The superintendent of Chaffey Joint presents that data for us. Dr. Holton presents it to us. And our superintendent in Ontario Montclair, Dr. Hammond, works closely with the other districts so that we are moving our kids through. We're preparing them to be successful at the high school. The high school then prepares them to be successful post-secondary. But having all of those entities, private and public, working together and sharing not just information but resources is a huge step in keeping this program, Promise Scholars, which is we're starting our 11th year. Last year was our 10th birthday, but it's 11 years now, and we're tracking the data to show pre-Promise Scholars and current numbers, whether it's completing FAFSA paperwork, college matriculation, careers, GPAs, college readiness. All of that can be shown through hard data, and that's what those partnerships help us do. And we can show it to the public. It's not something that has to be a secret. We want to celebrate it.
It sounds like every community needs a Promise Scholars. Do you see the program expanding to other communities in California? And if not, helping other communities to build their own program, just like Promise Scholars?
I believe it's critical for every community to rally around their kids, whether it looks like Promise Scholars or something else. Take the best of one organization and make it your own and create something yourself. I think we are one of the premier nonprofits working with students, not just in the scholarship and financial end, but the building the student and building the family and building the community part of the nonprofit. We awarded over $35,000 in scholarships this year, and we will continue to do that. But it's the day-to-day. It's the fifth grader thinking about a career. It's the seventh grader who will now start thinking about what maybe pathway they want to take when they get to high school through Promise Scholar programming. One thing that I've seen other groups and programs do is, again, take the best of something else. And that's what we do in education. We take a good idea, make it our own, and try to improve upon it. We would love to see other programs, because when I describe what I do to people that I've known for a long time, it takes a little bit longer than usual. It's not, I'm a principal at school X or I teach English at school Y, which used to be the conversation. Now, there's many layers to it, but the impact is incredible. And I would encourage other districts, other organizations to consider starting a small foundation. It starts small. The growing pains are difficult. I am the beneficiary of having that 10 years of history behind me. But now my goal is to move it forward. What can I add? What can we add to the community and to the programming of Promise Scholars?
You're listening to Education Insight. We've been speaking with Dr. Felix Melendez. He's the executive director of the Ontario Montclair Schools Foundation of Promise Scholars, which helps school children imagine where they'd like to be, and then helps them along the way to contour their education to actually realize that dream. Dr. Melendez, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the opportunity and the exposure.
If you'd like more information about the Promise Scholars program, go to promisescholars.org. As we close our program, we recognize the Cal State San Bernardino Music Department. Over the last half century, they've educated thousands of students in music, theory, and music technologies. Students from the program have gone on to become elementary, secondary, and university music educators. Their alumni are performers in symphony orchestras, in operas, in musical theater and jazz, and they are composers, arrangers, producers, and technicians on Broadway, in Hollywood, and throughout the entertainment industry worldwide. Soon, Juan Del Real will be an alumnus of that program. He first became interested in music at the age of 9, and now at 21, people are noticing his music. We did too. Hi, Juan.
Hi.
Tell us a little bit about your music.
I'm currently going to my senior year of my undergrad. I am a music education major for pre-certification, which means I can become an educator within California. It's just really been a passion of mine to go into education in general. And like even before music, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be an educator. And music, I just ended up falling in love with music a lot more in high school, and that led me to pursue a career in music education. And that's where I'm at currently, right here at Cal State San Bernardino.
For our listeners who are not aware of it, what is your instrument of choice?
So I am a clarinetist. I've been playing for around 10 years now, more or less. I truly love the instrument, and it's just a great passion of mine to be able to play it.
Yeah. What would you say is your favorite moment that you've ever experienced performing for others on your clarinet?
I think it kind of has to go back to when I was a freshman in high school. I was in a marching band at the time, and we had our final championship competition. And there was just this one moment where we did this one move. I just remembered the crowd cheering out and feeling that, the energy from the crowd was just so impactful. It stayed with me since then. And that sort of feeling is kind of what really motivated me a lot more.
Juan, when you daydream, where do you see yourself in 10 or 15 years? Would that be teaching music to others?
I know I want to be an educator within some musical field, whether that is working at a high school or elementary or possibly even being a professor. My love for music has led me to a point where I want to pass it on and show others, teach them the things I know about music.
Yeah. Well, best of luck to you, Juan, on your music, on your teaching career, and certainly on your academics as you go into your final year of college. And thank you again for taking our call, Juan. Good luck to you, dear.
Thank you, Lacey.
And that wraps up another edition of Education Insight. Be sure and join us next month. We'll be looking at student mental health in our local schools. We leave you with a musical piece from Juan Del Real. This is Mozart's third movement from his concerto in A major. I'm Lacey Kendall. Thanks for joining us.
Education Insight is produced in partnership with KVCR San Bernardino.
Our executive producer is Jacob Poor, and our production engineer is Tyler Veazey.
Alyssa Silva is our production assistant, and Lacey Kendall is your host.
Support is provided by Growing Inland Achievement, working together for inland education and economic success.
And by College Futures Foundation.
Join us again next time for
Education Insight.